Well, you're in for a treat tonight, folks. This is Woodworking is Bullshit, a podcast about creativity, art, design, philosophy, everything mental that relates to making and art. I'm your host, Paul Jasper, scientist by day, fine woodworker by night. And we have Erik Curtis, my co-host, in the chair, fine furniture maker, content creator.
What?
This is a first for us, and that's why I said, oh boy, it's going to get spicy tonight. Erik and I were talking the other day, and Erik said, what if we just roll the two of us? Let's just throw it back.
Well, so here's the thing. It is a first for the podcast, but this is also where the podcast was birthed out of.
That's true.
We started this podcast because Paul and I have a long tradition of any time that we are in person hanging out with one another, we go to the bar, we drink too many heavy IPAs, and we talk about life. And one of the things that is most charming about Paul is his complete disregard for social norms.
And I don't know what you're referring to.
And so he will meet a person for the first time and just be like, yeah, cool. So what's your childhood trauma? You know, we'll just dive into it. And
how do you really feel about that?
Right. And so that's where this podcast came from. And so we thought it would be an interesting exploration to, not have drunk conversation at the bar. I think that there will be more context and structure around it, I hope. But also to give a nod to that, because that's where it was born out.
Started.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first time I pitched the podcast to you? I pitched it to you.
I don't know. Do you?
I do. Yeah. I don't remember if we were on the phone or if we were in person. That's the part I can't remember. But I remember saying we were talking about design and inspiration. Again, one of the many times we've talked about it. And I kept saying, Erik, there's just a lack of this content in the woodworking space. Nobody talks about design. Nobody wants to think about it. Nobody wants to talk about all these mental things that you and I constantly hash out with ourselves. Why is no one talking about this? Why is it always fucking bro talk, jigs? Oh, how many teeth per inch is your saw?
Because that's a broader market than the design market.
Nah, and it also requires vulnerability on the part of the people talking about it, I think. And that's not comfortable for everyone. That's fine. I get that.
Yeah.
But I feel like secretly, in our secret lives, in our brain, in our heads, when we're alone, we're thinking about all the things we talk about. Is it okay that I do that? Is that copying? Am I feeling imposter syndrome? Perfectionism, is it holding me back?
Well, I agree with you for the most part, but I also want to be mindful of the fact that you and I are very like-minded in a lot of ways. And there are people out there who in this. So I don't want to make this like a moral or ethical hierarchy of once you get into talking about design, you are revealing the truth about what you think about. There are some people who just don't give a fuck and only care. Like the thing that brings them joy is thinking about how to make the thing, how to make it faster, how to make it better. And they don't give a fuck what it looks like. And there's real value in that.
That's true. I felt that way for about 10 years.
Yeah.
That's true.
I mean, you can't learn both of the things at the same time. And again, that even what I just said implies once you learn the craft, then you learn design.
It's better. Yeah.
Right. It's a progression. No. It's an evolution, and it's not necessarily. So I do want to point out that if you do not give a fuck about design and emotional vulnerability, that's okay as well.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, if you're listening to it, I guess with our listeners, Erik, we must have curated it, the listener base that they do care about it.
I think probably.
We talk about that most of the time.
They wouldn't suffer through our conversations if they didn't care.
I mean, this is episode 30-something. So, I mean, All right. So, wait, I just want to finish up on pitching the podcast. So, someone said to me recently, Like, why did you want to do a podcast if you like, it's so fucking saturated. The market is so saturated. There's so many podcasts. Everyone and their brother has a podcast. And like, it didn't even dawn on me that that was true. When we pitched the podcast to each other, I wasn't thinking whether the market's saturated or not. I had no idea. I didn't listen to podcasts very much. And I was just like, Erik, I want to talk about this. Like because we always talk about it when we're together, always. We can't seem to not talk about like design or like some conceptual piece or the mentality of being a maker or like something mental. We can't seem to stay away from it. So it's like, why don't we just record it because we want to talk about it anyway and release it? That way other people can be part of the conversation. And if they find it useful, great. Yeah. Otherwise, we'd be doing these conversations anyway in private. Maybe not as many, but it provides an opportunity to learn.
Well, that's the thing, right? Is doing a thing because you think it has value or doing a thing because you are driven to do it is a worthwhile effort, even if the quote unquote market is saturated. Saying that a thing is saturated implies that you're probably not going to make money on it because there are too many other options for consumers. Yeah. And that's fine. There's, again,
I wasn't even thinking about money at all.
Right. But all right. So I'm going to use this as a kind of offbeat example. There is a animated movie that just won Best Animated Picture. And the reason I'm going to bring this up is because the guy who made it is Latvian, and that's my heritage. So I know what's going on with that. But every animated movie has been made. And the saturation of animated movies, digital animated movies in the English speaking world, I mean, there's an infinite number of them. This guy does not speak English and decided to make an animated movie. There are no words in a full length feature film, and the animation looks like it's something out of 2007, but he did such an incredible job telling the story. It's called Flow. Like, it's a phenomenal movie. He did such a great job articulating the emotional arc of this main character, which is a cat, in it, that it ends up winning Best Animated Picture.
Unbelievable.
Like, so if you go into a project thinking, well, I'm a tiny production studio, an animation studio in what is technically not a third world country, but like the overall population of Latvia is less than 3 million. It's like 2.2 million. There's 3 million
that's like
Latvians
the
worldwide.
Population of Boston.
Like it's tiny.
Yeah.
And nobody speaks Latvian. Most people you speak to don't know that Latvia is a country. This guy decided that there was a story to tell and did it because he wanted to do it, and ends up winning an Oscar for Best Picture.
So that's the message. You make your own niche if you have passion and if it's good.
Yeah.
It just creates its own niche.
Yeah, we might be two idiots, but we're passionate about woodworking. So
well, that's for
there's
sure.
a conversation to be had.
Maybe we should talk about what we're actually going to talk about today, like other than reminiscing about how the podcast started.
Sure.
So, Erik pitched this to me fairly recently. He's like, "What if we do an episode where it's just the two of us?" And we each come with a question, and don't tell the other person what the question is. That's his chaos piece that he loves. That puts me very ill at ease, of course. And because, I like to prep and have some framework for our discussion so it doesn't go off the rails like it does every time when Erik...
Every goddamn time. You're welcome.
So we're going to call this Paul and Erik 50-50, half and half. I'm not sure, but it's some form of that. Which do you like better, half and half or 50-50?
Half and half just reminds me of my mom drinking coffee. So we go 50-50, I feel
All right,
like.
Paul and Erik, 50-50. So we each came with a question. We did not tell the other person what the question was. And that will be the basis of the show. So Erik?
And I do want to, we're going to dive into the question. I just want to preface this, kind of give inspirational acknowledgement to a show called No Stupid Questions, which is a show I've listened to every episode that's been created. And in their later episodes, what they did was the two hosts had questions from the audience, and I believe they didn't know what the other person's question was. So that's where I got this idea. And I think that's important to acknowledge because we live in this moment where we talk about intellectual property and stealing, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
It's repurposing an idea that exists into a format that I think fits our podcast because of where it originated from. That said, that's a great podcast. Go listen to it. That's a free plug for No Stupid Questions. Okay. So I got a comment on YouTube recently. I put up a short and it was me making a shelf for Sarah's apartment, my partner's apartment. And as soon as, like, even as I was making it, it had this kind of Star Wars vibe to it. Like there was something kind of Imperial fleet about it. And I still can't put my finger on what that is, but consequently, I used the Imperial March as the music for that piece. And I got this comment. I'm going to read it verbatim. It says, "Could you imagine what it was like the first time John Williams gave the orchestra their sheets and the musicians were glancing over it? There was a moment where he tapped his wand on a music stand, raised his hands up, and there was a split second of complete silence. And this song existed, but still didn't. An orchestra about to sight read this march and experience it for the very first time." And it's literally, I'm thinking about it right now and it's getting me excited. Right. It's such a good comment. And so the question that I sat with on this, because you're talking about, let's just take a violinist, for example. You're talking about a violinist in an orchestra who knows their part, and maybe they got the entire score, but more likely they got their part and they can see their part, not seeing the whole. And the first time that they get to experience this masterpiece is in a moment. And I'm wondering if as woodworkers, we get those moments, or if that kind of moment only belongs to the viewer, because woodworking takes so long. Any object takes so long to complete and come to fruition that by the end of it, we're so overly familiar with it that we might struggle to take in the moment of what we've accomplished. Whereas a viewer comes into your shop, and this happens all the time to folks, right? They come in and they go, "Oh, that piece is so amazing," but you're too close and you lose the forest for the trees. So I'm wondering, what do we get this type of moment as creators in furniture? Or does that type of experiential moment, that transcendent moment, only exist for people who are not the creator?
Having played an instrument from 4th grade through the end of graduate school, so I played a single instrument for, I don't know how many years that is, like 15 years. I can speak to this because I have felt what it's like to be in an all-state orchestra. I was able to be in the all-state and all-region band. These were very, very good bands, orchestras. And I've been able to be part of that, where you're watching the conductor's baton and you're waiting for what you think you know it's going to sound like. And I know what you're describing. I've been there. And I've had the euphoria of sitting in the middle of the orchestra where the sound, it just envelops you. It's all around you because all the play, you're in the middle of the whole orchestra, right? And the sound's everywhere, and it's loud, and it's phenomenal. And the players you're playing with are awesome, just awesome players. And it's difficult to even describe the euphoria that comes with it. So I've experienced it as the player, and I've experienced it as the viewer. As I take my daughter to see the BSO now, and we just saw the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra just a month ago. So and let's bring this back to woodworking too. I would say, Eric, my answer is something you didn't mention, which is it is only that kind of intensity is only reserved for the maker.
Interesting. What do you mean by intensity?
So, like, you know, when you were telling that comment, you had me kind of on pins and needles.
Right.
You brought me back to the moment that I was sitting in the chair about to play Elsa's Procession to the Cathedral, which if you Google it and you listen to it, it's an amazing song. And it's like moving. It's like, you'll never forget playing that song as part of an orchestra. you brought me back to that moment, and that moment was so intense. I mean, it was a 12 out of 10, and I'll never forget it. But that's because I was part of it and I was in the middle of it. As the viewer, I've never had anything even close to that intensity.
Really?
Yes, not even close.
Interesting.
So I think I had to be part of I had to be in it. I had to be part of the fabric of it. And it blew that scale out of the roof. It was unimaginably like intense and emotional. But I've never felt that in the audience before.
So that's interesting. So I was trying to relate it to the viewer because I don't know. Maybe there's a third leg of this that is about the communal creating experience. The experience of creating with others, right? Because so it sounds to me like, and tell me to fuck off if I'm wrong, but it sounds to me like what you're saying is the having some base understanding, like it's no, I don't think it's surprising to any of our listeners that you thrive with an outline. So having an outline and some base understanding of what the thing is allows you to experience it deeper when it all comes together and coalesces. Fair. I would not disagree with that, right? I think that's totally fair. But in woodworking, how do we get that type of thing? Because either you are the sole creator, and I'm just talking in our world, you and I, right? Either you're the sole creator, or the receiver. You are experiencing the thing as a viewer, and there's no moment at which that I could think of when I was kind of sitting with this question that your piece in the whole, but you don't know the whole yet.
Don't you think that as the maker, you have a more emotional moment with the piece than as a viewer?
I agree completely. I agree. I guess what I'm saying is like sometimes with very few pieces, we get the moment where we step back and we get to look at it and we go, oh, that's actually good. Like I actually did a thing.
Yeah.
But I think often that feeling is either relayed by other people's reactions to it. So like it's good, but you can't quite see that it's good because you're too close to it. And so and consequently, I think with time and space and reflection, you recognize that it's good. Or by the time you get to the finish line, you know that by the time you get to the finish line, you know that it's going to be good. So let's take another analogy. In a Super Bowl, there are the moments that are theatrical, and it's the last play of the game, and it's it's an interception at the goal line because they should have just handed the fucking ball off to Marshawn Lynch, right? Like it's that, right? Yeah. And so that is a huge dopamine rush of elation, of you did not know it was coming, and then you see it and it happens. Right. Versus this past Super Bowl in Philly. Now, I had a great fucking time. The city of Philly had a great fucking time.
Yeah.
But by the end of the first quarter, you kind of knew it was coming. And so it hits differently, even though it's still like the jubilation is good.
Sorry, you changed the question. Your first question was, are you as the maker or the viewer experiencing right.
They are different questions.
Now
but
you're
I'm
saying,
trying to.
Is it a surprise versus if you know it's coming?
Well, I guess that's the thing is like as a member of an orchestra, you know part,
it's coming,
and you know it's coming, but you don't see the whole picture. Versus what we do, you see the whole picture and you only get to experience it as it unfolds. There's no surprise in the process that we experience.
I see what you mean. So the viewer sees it for the first time.
The viewer comes in and is overwhelmed by a thing.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
It's love at first sight versus the slow evolution of affection.
Wow, that's a great point. I could see it both ways. I don't know, Eric. Now you've kind of reversed me. I see what you mean.
Yeah, it's a hard because once you, because the tricky thing is once you feel it's going in the right direction and you follow that and it starts to flow and you get into that state of flow, it's a wonderful feeling. But you kind of know that it's gonna work.
Wait, how about relating this as a metaphor to relationships?
Okay, all right, let's do it, baby.
One is
let's
like
dive.
the first. One is like a blind date where you're like, holy shit, that she's really pretty, and you're like, whoa, right? But then the other's like a marriage where you know what it is, but the feelings run a lot deeper. So one's kind of bubblegum infatuation, and the other, if you're doing it right,
we're going in the creek, don't rise.
I mean, I'm not.
So I hear what you're saying, and I agree with you completely. I think that's an excellent analogy because one is overwhelming in a moment versus like
the viewer to a piece of furniture may be overwhelmed in the moment.
Yes.
But the maker has lived with that piece every fucking inch of the way.
And that's right? That's a good point to bring up because one is not less than the other. And you can easily make the argument that long-term investment and understanding where it's going to go and choosing to be in that long-term relationship and developing affection is deeper and truer. I think that's a fair point.
It affects you for longer. And that comes back to my idea of playing an instrument. Like I will never forget that moment of playing that song when I was a teenager, yet I'm sure the audience doesn't remember it. It's here today, gone tomorrow.
That's your moment.
Yeah. So I that's a great, that's true.
But coming back to the infatuation, maybe this is just a broader cultural issue. Maybe not nobody. How many movies are about moments of infatuation versus deep, long-term developed love and actual affection?
They're all moments of infatuation.
Right.
And but that's geared toward money making, dude.
Okay, but yes.
The
but
cinema
I think that's
is
I also think that's
fucked.
been around far longer than the American dollar.
Well, I'll tell you, the pictures that typically win Oscars are the longer sit with you for the rest of your life.
Oh, that's fair.
Pictures,
that's fair. That's an interesting point.
The Marvel, like, Ant-Man and shit like that are like bubblegum. Like, I'm just going to forget my problems for 2 hours.
Yeah, we all know Ant-Man is a bubblegum romance.
Well, you know what I mean. It's like you're not going to remember the plot tomorrow.
No, you're right.
Whereas, like, I watched, I don't know, some of the Oscar nominations, whether it was like, I don't remember, but
sure, a thing that moves you is an investment.
They stay
in the
with
thing.
you for many years.
Yeah.
So I guess as woodworkers and artists, I prefer the longer term, more gritty, more real connection than I do the quick hit. But that's not to say it's all one or all the other. I think there's a balance. Like both have their place in your life, right? You don't always want a long, protracted harangue story, right? That like emotionally exhausts you because you don't have that much energy.
Yeah, you need some bubblegum romance in your life.
Yeah, you need a break from the intensity sometimes. So that's where I think the hit. How about you? How do you feel about this? What do you prefer?
What specifically?
Well, like, what do you prefer? Like with your pieces, like what seems to move you more? Like the making of the piece or like the quick hit, the infatuation of someone else's piece?
Well, I think to your point, I've never been able to fall in love with an object or a person for that matter without knowing background information on them. Like I'm not a love at first sight kind of person. I am very much the more I sit with a thing, the more I know about a thing, the more deeply I can love it.
Is that why you love me so much?
That's why I love you so much, buddy.
I know.
It keeps getting deeper with time, So and like anytime that I am infatuated with a piece, the first thing I do is try to learn everything I can about the piece. And if that information lends itself to more and more deep layers of understanding about the piece and the artist, then it makes me fall in love with it more. So let's go back to music because of the question. Okay. Bolero, right,
yeah.
by Ravel. I've heard anecdotal tales, and this is whatever, this piece is 100 plus years old. So anecdotal tales of the first time that people heard that at a show. By about the seventh refrain, people were shouting at the stage and walking out of the concert because it's a single. So it, for those of you who don't know anything about music, and I certainly don't pretend to know everything about music, but there is a melody line that begins slowly and softly, and then over the course of 15 minutes becomes louder and more emphasized and more exaggerated and sped up. And that is incredibly atypical of what a singular composition actually looks like.
Sure.
And it's a refrain of like 32 bars or something. It's not a long refrain. So to play that for 15 minutes is a choice. And the first time I heard it, I was like, huh, that's interesting. And the second time I heard it, I liked it a little bit more. And then I started looking into Ravel as a composer, and I realized he was suffering from a particular degenerative disease at that point that influenced his decision making. And you could just Google it. I don't have all of the information offhand. But the more I learned about the song and the more I learned about Ravel in the moment in which he was creating that piece, and the more I realized that was deeply reflective of that human moment in time that he was experiencing, the more I fell in love with that composition.
I see.
And it's now like, it's not, I'm not going to sit here and say it's the best piece of music ever written, but it's one of the things that I think about most often is like of classical music. It doesn't fall under classical. No, but please don't, shoot me a DM and tell me how it's not technically classical. Orchestral music, we'll say.
Well, the point is it stuck with you.
The point is it stuck with me. And the more I learned about it, the more it ingrained itself in me. And similar with pieces of furniture, I see a thing and I go, oh, that's beautiful. Why is it beautiful? I want to learn more. And I want to learn more about the composition. And I want to learn more about the creator's thought process in the moment. And the more information there is available, the more I can fall in love. The more we'll say this, the more emotionally available the object is, like in a relationship with a person, the more able I am to fall in love with it.
I get that. So I have a follow-up question related to that. So I do the same thing. If I like something and I'm enamored by it, I like deep dive it, right? To understand more about it. How often when you deep dive into an object or a person or a musician or anything, how often are you underwhelmed by what you
more
find?
often than not
versus versus impressed?
You're more
often like
because
let down, right?
So many people are hesitant to be emotionally open or even intellectually open about their process and about the thing that they made.
Every time I deep dive, I would say 8 times out of 10 I lose respect for what I deep dived on because the story or the person is just not who I thought.
Just comes up flat.
Yeah, it left me way flatter than maybe that file that under the idea that your imagination is far better than the reality typically.
Oh, sure.
Once in a blue moon, someone will really wow me, but 8 times out of 10, it's like, oh, it was just like a one-off, or it's not as good as I thought.
Yeah, it was a one-hit wonder or whatever the thing is. Yeah.
Interesting, Eric. When you were reading that, I was like on my tiptoes.
It is a fucking brilliant comment. Whoever wrote that, if you listen to the podcast, that was a phenomenal comment. And like what I loved about it is it wasn't a comment about my work.
No.
It wasn't a comment about it's good, it's bad, the technique, the wood, et cetera, et cetera. It was a thought that allowed me and presumably the viewer and anybody else who saw that comment to connect with the thing that I made using an analogy or an allegory completely different. And that, like, I don't know if you're a teacher, sir or madam, but that was a brilliant teaching moment is what that was.
Well, being a lover of Star Wars and I've felt that.
Yeah,
and
man.
By the way, it does look like one of the Star Wars ships. That's what it is. I think it's one of the Rebel ships has that T shape.
Yeah. And I like Star Wars. I can't say I love Star Wars. I couldn't put my finger on what it was, but as soon as I saw it, it felt like one of those ships.
Oh my God, I love Star Wars, and I've indoctrinated my daughter into loving Star Wars to the point that it has become her emotional security blanket.
So I have to assume that she has a Jar Jar Binks stuffed animal, or
not a Jar Jar Binks, but she does have an R2D2. It has more recently been replaced by a baguette, which is like the French bread baguette pillow that has become the new favorite. But we have seen Star Wars performed by the BSO. We go to every movie premiere together since the time she was a little girl. We watch it together when she's feeling down because that's like her safe space is Star Wars. So I've done my job right as her father.
You absolutely have. I got to tell you a very honest and emotionally vulnerable quick aside. So growing up, you and I have talked about it. I haven't talked about it publicly about the difficulties of kind of my preteen and teenage years, but it was a difficult time nonetheless. And I can't say that I was a great older brother to my brother, but one of the things that I tried to do that was like, good older brother and younger brother bonding time was we skipped school when The Phantom Menace came out, and we went and saw it on opening day.
That's awesome.
I was so stoked to be like, this is a thing we're doing together. We watched all 3 movies together when we were kids. Like,
that's awesome.
This is a thing. And then we went and we saw it, and we both walked out of the theater like, I don't think that was good, was it?
Jar Jar Binks ruined it.
Even like fucking 17-year-old Eric was like, I'm pretty sure that was a bad movie.
It's because you didn't help film the movie. You were the viewer rather than the maker.
Oh man!
All right,
buddy boy. What's your question? What do you got?
All right, so is it time to switch to my question?
Yeah, let's dive in.
Oh God, Eric, this is deep.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay. Oh man, I always feel bad asking you this. Eric, when insecurity creeps in about your woodworking or your professional woodworking career, what is it about?
Ooh. When is it? Hit me with it again. Hit me with it one more time.
When insecurity creeps in, what is it in regards to? And I'm specifically talking about you as a maker.
Sure. No. This is a personal question. Because I've been building things for so long, the overwhelming majority of my life, there's never really a point now at which I worry about if the thing I made is technically sound.
Mm-hmm.
But there have definitely been moments, even in the last year or 6 months, where I look at a thing that I've made and genuinely have been like, I don't know if I'm any good at this from a design, from an expressive standpoint of just like, I know. So there are things that I remind myself of because emotions are fickle and I can get in my own head. We can all get in our own heads. And I have these, I don't know if the mantra is the right word to say, but like, I often talk about not everything can be a home run, right? And a stand-up single has value. I think that's a fair analogy. But if you hit a handful of stand-up singles in a row, a dozen stand-up singles in a row, it's like, did I lose my power? Like, am I any fucking good at this thing? Or am I just good enough and charismatic? And so that's where the insecurity creeps in of like, I don't know. I don't know if I have the capacity. So here's another thing. I don't want to perpetuate the stereotype of the tortured artist. And that's a conversation we will get into in a future episode we already have on the docket. But I also recognize not all of my best work, but certainly more than 50% of my best work have come at moments where I was emotionally vulnerable and needed to express a thing for my own emotional well-being. And now I'm in a place, thankfully, where uh, like I am reasonably economically stable in spite of the moment that we're living in.
You're fat and happy.
I'm in a relationship with a wonderful human being. Like I'm overall, I'm very happy with my life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I look at the work I've put out over the last 2 years,
And it looks like you're happy.
and it looks like looks like I don't give a fuck. It looks like I'm working rather than expressing or creating.
Wow.
And so
Erik.
there are those moments where it's just a question of like, am I good at this thing or am I manic and emotionally unstable? And when shit hits the fan, I have to have a vehicle to expel that from myself.
Mm-hmm.
Or am I actually a good designer?
Well, for those of you who don't know Erik as well as I do, I can tell you unequivocally that was an extremely honest answer. I know. I know.
I'm not here to bullshit, dog.
No,
you know?
that was as revealing and insightful and like that is honesty through and through. So I appreciate that answer. I know what you mean. I know the feeling.
What's your feeling on it? Like, where do you come down on that?
It's similar.
Shocking. That's surprising to everybody who's ever listened to this podcast that we would have a similar opinion.
I know technically what I make is good enough. I know that. No one's ever implied it wasn't technically good enough. But I do know that there is a data-driven phenomena that people do their best work when they're younger. In general, there's a graph, and it's across time. The first time I saw this is looking at Nobel laureates. At what age did Nobel laureates make their Nobel winning discoveries or their paradigm shifting discoveries? When did they shake shit up? It peaks around late 30s.
Interesting.
Early 40s. And then not precipitously, and then it declines through the 50s and 60s and 70s, and then precipitously drops off. So that says, this is not opinion, this is fact, that the average person, now you might not be average, you might think you're different, but the average person does their best, most groundbreaking stuff in their late 30s and early to mid 40s. Why is that? Because when you're younger than that, you don't know enough about yourself. You don't know enough about the discipline. You're still learning how to do the thing. At that age, 30s, early 40s, you're young, you're old enough to know the score, but you're young enough to play the game still. You got what it takes to still do the thing, and you know what, and you're hungry. You're still hungry. You still got that hunger, that angst that drives you out of the norm, out of convention, away from the bandwagon to try some new fucking shit that you've never seen before, and you don't care what anyone thinks. The problem is, by the time you're in your like later 40s, 50s, you're fat and happy again, Erik. In a way, like you said, you start to feel more content with your life. You're more financially secure. You're not really looking to upset the balance as much. You have children now. I'm just giving an example.
Sure.
You have children now. You have a spouse. You have friends, and like life is balanced, and life is amazing and happy. And if you're happy all the time and you're content and you feel good, you're not looking to like express something where you take that fucking knob and you turn it from a 3 up to a 15. Because you don't feel that in your heart. You feel pretty happy day to day.
Yeah.
And you don't have quite the energy. like when you're younger, you just have this endless energy. And I think as you get older, you're just kind of you're wiser, you're more stable. Like when I was 20, man, I used to get like high highs and low lows. I was like,
sure,
ooh,
sure,
right?
sure.
But now that I'm 50, I'm much more even, Steven. I'm way
Yeah.
more stable. And that's brilliant for day to day life. And it's brilliant as a parent. I can see my daughter come in with shit where she's like yo yoing from like the highest high. And I can be that stable voice of reason that's like, it's okay. This is what you should do. Or like, tell me about this. It's okay. I'm that even voice for her. And that comes with age. But that doesn't lend itself to groundbreaking science or groundbreaking art.
That obsession is lacking, and that willingness to sacrifice everything and everyone for that matter, right?
That's right.
Like
That's
when
right.
you're in your 50s, you have a daughter, you have a wife. The idea of I have an idea and I'm going to throw these
risk
relationships
it all, right?
away. Yeah. You know what that is? That's a shitty parent.
Yeah. And it's risk. It represents risk.
But it could lend, and I'm not saying it does. And I want to be careful not to kind of hold that up on a pedestal. But more successful artists and groundbreaking artists than not had difficult personal relationships because of the willingness to throw away those relationships for the sake of doing something, and whether it's obsession and manic energy or simply ego and needing to constantly revisit trying to one up yourself.
100%. Yes. Ella Fitzgerald, alcoholic, horrible mom, the most brilliant jazz singer the world's ever seen. Miles Davis, drug addict, out of his mind with drugs, unstable. John Coltrane died of a heroin overdose, I think. Totally unstable, but brilliant artistically, right?
So is it causation or correlation to some extent? Because I wonder, like, there's a lot of people who have died of a heroin overdose who have not been brilliant jazz musicians, and I'm wondering,
well,
is the obsession with and endless pursuit of creative greatness
that's it.
Part of
that's
it?
It.
Is that it, or is it also partially that these people were going to be predisposed to those things anyway, and they happen to find a thing that could almost do the same thing and quell those desires for a moment?
I can't speak. That's a great point, because those people trend towards high risk, high reward because they're wired for high risk, high reward. I don't know, Eric. That's a great point.
It's the same thing. Like we're doing this right now in a cultural moment of like, Tom Brady was the greatest of all time. Tom Brady looks at, and I'm not going to judge his humanity, but from the outside looking in, has sacrificed a lot to play an extra 1 to 2 years in the NFL. Largely considered the greatest player of all time. That's wonderful. He kind of looks like a miserable human being from the outside.
Well, I don't know if he's
terrified of. And again, I'm not trying to judge this man. I don't know if he's miserable.
As someone who lives in New England,
and don't let your fandom show too hard. Listen, I respect the fuck out of what he accomplished. But
I
also
agree,
like
Eric.
looking at it from what I think and hope would be a healthier emotional standpoint. Would I be willing to sacrifice? Would I be willing to sacrifice Sarah to be the greatest football player of all time? No. Like that's an easy no for me. Dog.
You might have said yes if you were 21.
When I was 20. Yeah.
So coming back to your question about, or sorry, my question.
No, your question
about what insecurity creeps in. It's now that we've talked through this, I can say it a different way. I can say, I worry, is my best work behind me? I worry a lot about that. And every piece I make, I ask myself, is this just me like trying or did I actually did the magic happen again? Do I still have the magic, or
Hmm.
is it behind me?
Do you actually think that your best work is behind you, or is that just an anxiety?
I don't know the answer.
Hmm.
I honestly don't know, because trying to find my voice when I started Copper Pig like 8 years ago, trying to figure out who I was as a designer was a very passionate moment for me. And it lasted years. And I tried all kinds of stupid shit. And when I nailed it a time or two, when I would happen on those gems along the way, it filled me up like my chest wanted to burst open. It felt
Mm-hmm.
so euphoric. Like I found I figured it out. Like this piece, when I look at it, it fills me up. It gives me chills. It makes me feel fucking amazing. I think I'm onto something, and I would pursue that down a line. And the next piece, I'm like, that's good. That's not quick. And then 2 or 3 pieces later, I'd hit it again, and it made me feel like that euphoria again. And lately, it's been projects and requests. The projects have been coming in, the commissions have been coming in, and they say, can you make me this? Can you make me that? And I very much want to. These are great commissions, meaningful, thoughtful, appreciative customers, total artistic freedom, like total fair compensation, everything about it. Check, 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 check. And then when I finish them, I step back and I don't know if I'm riffing on my
Mm.
previous accomplishments, my previous like I made progress before when I was hungry. Am I just riffing on that? Am I just mailing it in, variations on a theme, or am I continuing to develop? I don't know the answer yet.
Oh boy,
How
that's
about how about you?
well. So I'm thinking about what you just said, and I'm wondering if, and this is, I'm going to use the generic you. I don't want this to sound like I'm saying you, Paul, because this very
Hmm.
much applies to me too.
Hmm.
But is part of that questioning, that worry, that difficulty, your inability to accept your finite limitations? Is it ego?
Hmm.
Right?
Hmm.
So there can only be, and I know Isaac Newton is a flawed example because maybe he stole calculus from somebody else, or maybe it was just a concurrent revelation situation. But there are only so many Isaac Newtons that come along, and
Hmm.
everybody before Isaac Newton could do math up to the existence of calculus,
Okay.
and calculus didn't exist yet. And it took a Newton to invent calculus or discover calculus, however you want to see it, to expand that world beyond that. So
Okay.
your best work could
Hmm.
be brilliant, but you have limitations as a human being, as a creative person,
Hmm.
and
That you
is
can't.
part
I know. I
of
know.
our
I know what you're
job
saying.
to accept that limitation and be
Yeah.
happy with it. Like, for example, uh, Mickey Mantle, one of
Hmm.
the greatest hitters of all time, eventually he
Hmm.
lost the magic. His
Yeah.
body broke down because he was a raging alcoholic, and it broke down faster than some other people in the 1930s.
Hmm.
And you can either keep pushing through and try to beat Roger Maris got there in the home run derby, or you can accept that you're older and shit's going to break down faster and your body's going to have more aches, and you accept your humanity. And as part of our job to accept our humanity and look at our career in retrospect and go, we made some good shit. Like, we contributed, and contributing to the craft is enough. Or do we have to be one of the titans sitting atop Mount Olympus?
Okay, great. Great question. I don't think I was ever a titan of any sort. I wanted to be good at design. I don't know if I got there.
Hmm.
I mean, it's good. It's like I feel like I would give myself like a B,
Hmm.
maybe a B plus on occasion. But am I rewriting design of furniture or woodworking? Not in any way, shape, or form. No, I am but a hack, or I'm sorry, hack. That's not good. I am nobody.
Don't undersell it.
No, I really think I'm nobody compared to people who started whole designs, who conceptualized entire fields of design. They, to me, are the titans. They had such profound vision and such profound design ideas that they could inspire an entire movement of art. I am nothing compared to that. I am but taking the dregs of little tiny ideas and like putting it together in unique combinations.
Okay,
so
here's where I'm going to push back on you against that. Push back against you on that.
Okay.
So much of that legacy
is marketing and sales.
I mean, it's just time. Right?
Yeah, time, marketing,
Edgar
sales.
Allan Poe
yeah, all of it. That's true.
invented the category of science fiction and died broke and drunk in a gutter in Baltimore, and nobody thought he was worth a fucking damn.
That's true.
And it's not 150 years later, we're like, he was a fucking genius.
And Mark Rothko's paintings were selling for nothing, and now they're going for 120 million.
Henry Wadsworth Longfellow was one of the greatest poets of his time, and now nobody takes him seriously because he's seen as a fucking pop artist.
And none of that has to do with the art, actually. It has to do with a narrative, and sales, and money, and a perception.
But your legacy in the vehicle, the field in which you exist.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, maybe I'm putting too much emphasis on the field leaders.
Yeah.
Do you think your best, Eric? Do you think your best pieces are behind you?
I don't know. That's a hard question to answer.
What was the last piece you made that actually was like, fuck, wow, yes, I did it?
Unequivocally, the Pontiac cabinet.
I knew it.
I know. But so this also comes to the question of like, how many groundbreaking pieces do you actually have? Right? Like in the course of a career, over the course of 50 years.
Yeah.
How many groundbreaking pieces do you actually have?
How many
things?
Okay.
If I say Andy Warhol, how many images come to mind?
Andy Warhol.
But I mean, it's one of the most prominent artists of the 20th century.
How many groundbreaking songs does Queen have?
Sure. I mean, I love Queen, so I know a lot of their discography.
I know, but
groundbreaking,
like 5, 3,
maybe, and they're one of the most successful of all time.
How about I don't know. Pick someone. There's so many.
Led Zeppelin, but they ripped off a lot of people.
Well,
the Beatles, but they played with editing, but their composition wasn't necessarily unique. Like there are different ways to qualify and say like, it's good or it's not good.
Yeah. So I mean,
in the woodworking world,
you're making the point that not every try can be a hit.
It can't be. Run. And if you like, we talk about the Titans again. Let's just take like the big three of the 20th century, and this is gross oversimplification.
Okay.
Let's take, Eshrik, Nakashima, Maloof.
Okay.
How many pieces from each of them do you know right offhand that are like, these are groundbreaking pieces? Or even not even groundbreaking, brilliant pieces. Eshrik's Staircase. Okay, great.
Like three from each of them.
Yeah,
one to 3. Yeah.
And they all made shit for 50 plus years.
Yeah.
So
I see.
3 great pieces over a course of 50 years. That's one every 15 plus years, 15 to 17 years.
Yeah. That's a good point.
So it's hard to quantify of like, am I going to get worse? Because so much of the creative process is just getting lucky and catching a spark and riding it through to the end and like seeing what happens.
Oh, I still wonder where I am with that. I still wonder if I have a few waiting for me or not.
There is no doubt in my mind that there is a potential reality, maybe a split in the multiverse somewhere, where I've made my best work and the rest of my work is just And here's what I know. I know that the going through the creative process and making objects is emotionally, spiritually, physically important to me.
Yeah.
So if I've made my best work, if I've made something that stands up to the test of time as halfway decent. I've done something that the overwhelming majority of people have not done.
And it first of all, it supports you living.
Yes.
Like you make some money, which you need, and it brings intense joy to the owner.
Yes. And it gives me a sense of purpose. It gives me a sense of accomplishment. I think we've talked about this on the show before. If not, you and I certainly have. Like, there have been periods of time in my life where all of the money has been physically stolen from me. That the way I was going to continue existing on this planet was in question. That the reputation that I had built had been taken, or at a minimum tarnished by other folks. The one thing that people can never take away from you is your accomplishments in the way that you see them, in the object. This is what I think part of the reason I got out of music and into objects is because, like, look, for anybody watching, that was my fucking desk for a number of years until I made this new one. This object was meaningful to me, this spiral desk. And it every time I had like a moment of, I don't know what I'm doing with my life, I could look at that thing. I could physically touch it. It existed. Nobody could take away the fact that I made that thing. And that anchor point in the physical world in which we live was important to me emotionally. So whether or not I make anything great, I made a thing that showed me that I was capable of creating value. And that is invaluable in my experience.
That was valuable to you at a time you needed it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I often think about this topic about, like, have you made your best piece, and being at the top of the mountain, and whether the Nobel laureate curve that I talked about. I often think about it with music. There are certain songs, and we've touched on this already, but there are certain songs you listen to that you just know that was the peak of that musician. That they were at the peak, without a doubt. That is their best shit that they'll ever make. And it sends chills down your arms, because to know that someone's at that very fleeting, it's so fleeting, right? As an artist, that it's like catching lightning in a bottle. That moment that you do your best shit is such a small period of time in your life. And you don't know when it'll come or where you are. But when you hear someone else, I can recognize when someone else is at their peak, and it hits me. Like, I'll be listening to a song and I'm like, this is their best shit ever. What must it have felt like to be them in that moment? They must have maybe they didn't realize it.
Well, I think this comes back to my question.
It does.
Like, do we get to have that moment as furniture makers, or is that reserved for?
I thought of that.
For things and experiences that are more, for lack of a better phrase, temporally locked.
Yeah.
Like in a space, in a moment, like the Nick Foleses of the world, a career backup, and wins Philly's first Super Bowl with a fucking brilliant performance.
Yeah.
That is a moment. Like, nobody had any doubts before or after that singular moment that was the peak of his career.
There are these moments in time,
how do you
right?
Yeah, how do you accept that as a human being and be grateful that you had that moment versus consistently try to chase that dragon?
Yeah, I don't know, Eric.
I don't
know if mine are behind me or in front of me or already half exceed. Like, I don't know, but I think about it a lot. Every piece I ask myself, is this good? Is this better? Or is this just me getting lazy and comfortable? We have very similar answers to our questions.
We do. Well, that's not, I was going to say I don't worry about getting lazy, but that's not true. They're definitely, I felt
soft, not lazy, but soft.
Yeah.
Right?
There, more recently, I have felt moments of like, could I have done better? Could I have put in more work? But there's also a limitation when you're stretched. This is what I'm contending with now. When you're stretched across multiple things. You know, when you're in a relationship, when you're running a business on YouTube, when you're trying to create interesting work as a woodworker, when you're teaching in different locations, there's only so much mental energy you have, and you can only expel so much and also maintain your sanity. So maybe it's a little bit soft, but was I able to make that piece and still feel a sense of satisfaction and not sacrifice my well-being to do so? Then maybe that's good enough, or at least at this moment, maybe that's good enough.
It's going to have to be good enough, because that's the value proposition you're putting on your own life at this point, at this age where you are. It's going to have to be good enough.
Yeah.
That's where you are.
And here's the kind of other caveat to that. If you're doing commission work, which both of us do, is the client going to be okay with that? And how do you express that? Or do you express that?
Well, I know the client's going to be okay with it. I know that for a fact. But I think we have a much higher bar for ourselves than the client has for us.
I think that's true of you and I, and probably a lot of people listening to this podcast, but I don't think that's true of everybody.
Okay.
That's not universal, right?
Well,
there are a lot of people who are doing it just to sell the thing, and whatever is the lowest amount of effort to sell the thing is the amount of effort they're going to give.
Well, look, if they're making a choice between having food on the table or not.
Yeah. That's not a judgment. I'm not judging them for it. I just want to put context to the conversation of it.
It's like, if you have the luxury of pushing yourself, if you have that luxury, you can. And if you don't, you just got to get it done and get the paycheck. I see both sides of that coin.
And so if you're getting the paycheck and you're feeding your family and you're doing a thing that brings you joy, that is not sitting in a office lit by fluorescent bulbs all day long, but you're not doing groundbreaking work, is that enough?
It depends on who you are. For some people, that is enough, and for others, it is not. Oh my God. I almost forgot, Eric.
We forgot that we were doing a goddamn podcast?
I did. It felt like we were at the bar together.
Yep.
Oh my God. That was old school, Eric.
It is old school, baby. All right. How about this? We said that we were going to do a second seg.
Okay.
But we're already an hour into this goddamn conversation. I think that we saved that second seg for the after show.
After show it is.
Okay. So on the after show, before we close out, just so you guys know, we're going to dip into some of my favorite mean YouTube comments that I've gotten recently. Because some of them are like genuinely mean. And I'm like, I want to know what this person was thinking. And some of them are just weird in a funny way, and I want to get Paul's reaction to see what he thinks.
And I was going to bring mean comments that I get on my Instagram, but I don't get any.
This motherfucker. I was literally in the pre-show, I was like, it would be very funny if you balanced that out with comments on your Instagram. And he was like, he literally said, I haven't gotten a mean comment in so long. I don't know if I can pull one up. And he tried for like 10 fucking minutes and he couldn't find one.
I can't help it, man.
You live in a bubble.
I do. I live in a big bubble. Well, guys, I really did forget we were recording this. I was just so in the moment talking to Eric. Like, I forgot this was a podcast episode. I did. I'm not even joking.
That's what happens. We're genuinely friends, guys. This is when we have the post call, like the post ep call, and we just
this is it.
You know, this is what it is.
This is what it sounds like. I hope you enjoyed our 50-50 episode with Paul and Eric. Maybe we'll do this as a series. You know, maybe we'll do it again with 2 different questions.
I dig it. I'll be honest. I liked this format. I thought it was good. We really were vulnerable
to dig a lot deeper and to express our true friendship as opposed to like keep into a framework and all that.
If this is, by the way, an ep that you guys really enjoyed and you want to see more of this, do us a favor. DMs are great. We love seeing the DMs. they're really, really wonderful to see how much you guys vibe with the show. Drop a comment in Apple Podcasts and or Spotify, and because that helps the ratings of the show, that helps the show do better. Yeah. And that also is a great place to tell us how you want to see the show move forward.
Absolutely. And if you want the after show that Eric talked about with his mean comments, the way to get the video feed and the after show is to just support us on Patreon. The only way this podcast grows, because we don't advertise it, is by you telling your friends, we think this is valuable. So if you think it's valuable, and a lot of people expressed it to us that they do think it is, tell your friends. That's all. Yeah. Please. Yeah. It's the only way we reach more people.
And the Patreon is the best way to support the show. But, on this one particularly, there's no pretty people to look at. So I can't encourage you to watch the video feed of this particular episode.
You're pretty. You're pretty.
Between the two of us, we're not half bad looking.
Well, you're the prettier one. Let's be honest.
I don't know. All right. I don't know.
Well, thanks, everyone. We'll stop arguing over who's prettier, and we'll
see.
Because we know it's Eric.
Tell Paul he's pretty.
Bye. And we'll see you in the after show. Bye.